whenever I do a DAW-less live looping guitar-based jam thing, there are 4 essential pieces of gear that I really need to make that happen. Number 1 is I need a drum machine or a groove box of some kind. Number 2 is I need a looper with the ability to sync over MIDI with that drum machine. Number 3 is I need an amp modeler, multi-effect like the Line 6 HX Stomp. And then number 4 is I need a mixer to adjust all of my levels and pans and all that good stuff. So I've been really interested in this unit right here. This is the 1010music blackbox, and based on what I've read about it and what I've seen people use it for, it kind of takes care of 3 of those use cases right off the top. It can be a drum machine and a groove box. It's a sampler, sequencer. It can also be a live looping rig for guitarists. You can live loop into these pads. And you have some pretty decent mix control over individual tracks. Level, pan, there's a compressor, there's a, if I can remember how to get to it, there is an EQ. So, you know, some decent mixer control in there as well. So I'm going to try and kind of make something contained in this box and see if we can get away with using just this and an amp modeler to do one of those live looping jams. So let's jump in. Let's start with the drum programming portion of this box. So it's laid out in 16 pads, just like you would see on an MPC or an SP404. It is a touch screen, so you can tap different pads to play them. Right now, I don't have anything loaded in here, but as you would expect, you can load one-shots and drum samples and play them back. So let's go into info and load on this first pad. I was scrolling through the presets before this. I like that kick, so let's just load that. And now we have a kick there. Let's put a snare right here. Go back to snares. That's fine, we'll put that snare right there. And then last but certainly not least, let's put in hi-hat. Oops. In this box. Ooh, that's a nice hat. Okay, so there we go. We have a drummable situation here. Finger drumming on a touchscreen, not super ideal if you're used to an MPC or something like that, but you can plug a MIDI controller into this and use, you know, a proper pad controller. For now, I'm just going to stick with the touchscreen and let's keep this thing moving. Record a pattern, hold record, press play, and it's going to loop this sequence and let you record into it. Just like that. It's also quantizing to the nearest 16th. Let's play some hi-hats. There's a handy velocity slider here, so I can play some lower velocity hi-hats. And there you go. Simple drum beat. Now, it should be noted here that there is also a sequencer here, and you can get pretty in-depth with how you sequence your patterns. You can make them a lot more complicated and get a lot more nuanced than I just did. But I find that my favorite way to record drums is just to loop record and play them in real time. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to load up a drum beat that I programmed a little earlier and show you the live looping part of this, which is really cool. So this is the first beat that I put together on it. When I got it, it sounds like this. And as you can see, I just put one-shots in the bottom 8 pads and programmed a little drum pattern by just tapping in a loop. But I have 8 pads left. And like I mentioned earlier, you can actually live loop into these pads and then trigger them and launch them like clips in something like Ableton or Bitwig. And it's really fast. It's really fun. And it gives you a lot more control than you would have with something like a foot pedal looper where everything stacks on top of each other and you don't have individual control over your layers. So let me grab my guitar and I'm just going to give you a quick example of how that works. Okay, I've got my guitar here. I'm plugged into my HX Stomp running into the blackbox. So let's talk about live looping. So if you press info on an empty pad, we have a bunch of settings here that we want to make sure that we set correctly before we start. So record input, obviously where the signal's coming from. You can see my guitar going in there. Record to play just means that it's going to loop back once it's done recording. Length tells the black box how long your loop is going to be. And just a note here, a cool thing is different pads can be different lengths. So I could record a 2-bar guitar pattern, and then if I wanted to record a shaker for just 1 bar, I could do that in another pad. Record quantize is how long until the black box starts recording, I guess, if that makes sense. So if my beat is playing and I press record, this is going to start recording on the nearest bar marker. It'll make more sense once I actually do it. Record monitor output, multiple outputs on this thing. I'm just routing everything through output 1. And then we're not going to use the threshold setting for now. So let's go back to the top and do some live looping. So to record a loop into this pad, just press info and then hit record. And there it is. It recorded my pattern into this little pad right here. Let's use another pad, go to info again. I'm gonna change to a bass sound on my HX Stomp, press record again. And there's a bass sound. I'm still monitoring so I can kind of solo over it. And I can do this as many times as I want. I mean, I can't do this as many times as I want. I can do this however many times there are pads available. So I could record 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more tracks if I wanted to. If I was using a drum machine with this, I could record all 16 tracks as guitar parts. Let's record one more just for kicks. 3, 4. I said one more, but you know, when it's so easy, gotta do another one. Okay, I'm gonna stop this now. Press stop twice to make everything stop at the same time. So like I said before, you can launch these just like you can clips in a clip launcher utility like Ableton or Bitwig. If I press play on my beat, these won't play to start, but I can launch them individually. That launches. Let's say I want my bass to come in next. 3, 4. Now let's say I want my guitar to cut out. 3, 4. Bring it back with everything. Stop everything. So pretty cool. A lot of control over which parts of your song come in and out. And I want to talk about this versus a looper because looping is a wide world of preferences and perspectives. If you are someone who loves live looping with a pedal or an RC505 where it's just instant, you don't have to set anything up, you don't have to be constrained to a certain number of bars, you just press to start, press to stop, this probably won't be for you because as you saw, you actually do need to give it some information before you loop into it. It wants to know beforehand how many bars you're going to play, and you actually cannot layer audio on top of your existing loops. So like a looper, I can layer as many times as I want on a loop. I can record 100 guitar parts if I want. This will only let you record one part per pad. You can't stack them. So if you're somebody that likes to loop with, 50 or 100 guitar parts, this is not going to do it for you. For me, 8 parts is usually more than enough. If I'm using a drum machine with it, I would have access to all 16, which is way more than enough. And to me, it's worth it to be able to have individual control over the level and pan of each loop. In a traditional looper, you record all of your parts, but then after the fact, you can't edit the volume or the pan of each individual part. Whereas here, let's go into our mix. If this part is too loud, I can turn it down, pan it to the right, pan these hard left and right. Turn the bass up, which is really, really cool. I mean, when you're recording a lot of guitar parts, I think panning is such a big part of the equation, and that's what I miss when I'm using a looper pedal, the inability to pan all of my parts all over the stereo field. So I love this function of it, and that actually leads us into the mixer portion of this. Of all three functions that I've mentioned in the title of this video, mixer is probably the biggest stretch that I'm making. There is only one stereo input on this, so you can't route all of your gear to it and mix it all together. You need to use what you're creating in this box and just your stereo input. However, if you are just using this box, you do have a fair amount of mixing capability. Like I showed you in this mix page, I can adjust level and pan for each track, all of my drums and all of my guitars. I have the ability to route to 2 effects, delay and reverb. Right now, I think I have my snare track and my clap are routed to just a little bit of reverb. And then I have the ability to mute and solo individual tracks in real time. Here's an example. Those are all muted, bring them all back. So that's pretty handy for performance. And then in the tools section, there is a master compressor. This is actually pretty subtle unless you're really loud, then you can really hear it squishing. But for now, it's really acting more as just a limiter and keeping me from clipping. And then the other thing here is if I go to effects and press this twice, I have a master EQ. So there's a couple ways that I could use this. I could use this as like a a low pass filter for effects. I have access to the resonance here. I can change the type, so I can go high cut or I can go low shelf, low cut. If I did low cut, I can remove the bass as an effect, or I can change the type over to parameter and I can EQ specific points if I want to do that. So in the end, is this a better drum machine than a Digitact? No, probably not. Is it a better mixer than a Tascam Model 12? No, it's not. Is it a better looper than an RC505? For me, it might work better, but for a lot of people, it wouldn't. I'm not saying that this thing is the best at any of those three functions, but the fact that it does all three of them in this box makes it a really, really, really convenient tool, especially for instrumentalists who are jamming over the drums that they're creating and want to be able to live loop. So more to come with this box. You're going to see more content with this in the future. I'll take you through kind of making a track from scratch, deep dives into how to use it and things like that. But for now, this is just my kind of first impression that this is a really, really cool box for doing 3 distinct jobs in one. I've really enjoyed it. The looping, I think, is fantastic. It's perfect for me. Not for everyone, but it's perfect for me. And if you guys know of any other groove boxes that do that combination of things, sequencing, live looping, and individual multi-track control over those loops, let me know. I can't think of any off the top of my head with the exception of maybe the Octatrack. But anyways, let me know what your favorite solution is for this type of thing. Thanks for tuning in. You're going to see more of this in the future. Yeah, thanks for watching, y'all. See you next time.